or 11:08, I was okay, and yes, we are recording. We got that down. So welcome to everyone online or in person. Monica, would you take the roll, please?
Yes. We have President Waspy,
Here.
Director Coffey,
Here.
Director Eccles. Present. And I would like to introduce the staff participating in person. We have General Manager Sabrina Landreth, General Counsel Lynn Borgat, EGMs Dr. Anna Alvarez and Jim O'Connor, staff presenters Susan Shu and Brian Holt. Additional staff in person is Lisa Gorgon, Miriam Lavelle, Ken Wasaki, Jason Rosenberg, and helping staff Samson and Monique.
All right, thank you very much. And could you tell folks how they could participate in today's meeting?
Yes, so today's meeting is held pursuant to the Brown Act as amended by AB 361. Board members and staff may participate via phone or video conferencing and through a hybrid of in-person and remote attendance. We are providing live audio and video streaming. Members of the public wishing to make a public comment can do so by 1, live via Zoom, 2, by submitting an email, or 3, leaving a voicemail. This information is noted on the agenda. If there are no other questions about the meeting procedures, we will begin.
All right, thank you very much. So our first item today is the Regional Parks Foundation Annual Report for 2022. Susan.
Good morning. Oh, can you see me? Good morning, President Waspy and directors. Pleasure to be here today. I am serving as the interim executive director for the Regional Parks Foundation, also your AGM for Public Affairs. Really pleased to present our year-end review for 2022. But first and foremost, I'd like to introduce our foundation board president, Les Posworth, for his introductory remarks to our year-end review.
Welcome, Les.
Thank you, Susan, and good morning, executive board members. Thank you for this opportunity for the foundation to update the executive committee on how the foundation is doing and what we've been up to. Assistant General Manager Shu will be providing the detail in a moment, but I just have a few comments to start us off. First, let me say that I'm very pleased to be representing the full foundation board of directors here today. As you know, we've had a bit of a challenging year with our changes at senior management, but I'm happy to assure you that with the full support of the district, particularly General Manager Sabrina Landreth, we are doing very well, perhaps even better than might have been expected. After Carol and Juliana left, we had the direct support for several months of Ann Kassenbaum, which was really great for us. And now we have Susan, who has really thrown herself into the work of the foundation as the interim ED. She's been a tremendous resource for us. The recruitment for our permanent ED is well underway. The posting closed earlier this week. I was told there, well, as of 2 weeks ago, over 50 applicants, probably more, usually a big rush at the end. So I'm sure there's some good people in there. So we're excited about that. And also, as you may know, once that person is in place, there will be a foundation development officer, a new position filled to help with the fundraising and development. Our ongoing success is also due in large part to our very dedicated and fantastic staff who have continued to work seamlessly and tirelessly throughout the transition period. And without them, we wouldn't be able to keep the doors open, so to speak. We also have a very talented and engaged board. So we are poised for another good year. So despite the recent challenges, the foundation continues to play an important role in generating broad support among community members and donors, as we have done since our inception in 1969. We raised over $3 million in 2022. It's 169% of our goal, and also experienced a record number of members, 12,586, highest ever. So even in a difficult year and post-pandemic or pandemic phase out or whatever we're in, still we're carrying on and doing really well. The foundation also continued to support district programs like the camperships and trail maintenance, helped serve over 10,000 community members directly in programs funded by the foundation, continued our program of free memberships for disadvantaged and underserved youth, and provided resources to further the shared goal of access for all to the parks and trails. We very much look forward to our continued close partnership with the Park District in 2023 and for many years beyond. And on that note, I will turn it over to Susan to provide some detail about the foundation's recent accomplishments. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to speak and for being such a supportive partner of the foundation. Susan.
Thank you, Les.
Thank you, President Hosworth. Much appreciated. I'm going to try to get this going here. We do have a lovely PowerPoint. Thank you to staff. Magic of technology. As President Hosworth mentioned, the Regional Parks Foundation has indeed been supporting the Park District since 1969. Very pleased to be part of the effort and to share the amazing accomplishments from the last year. Let's see if I can. As was noted in 2022, the foundation did indeed raise over $3 million, 169% of the $1.8 million goal. You'll notice throughout the presentation, there'll be quite a few exclamation marks to note our accomplishments. Fundraising snapshot, certainly the membership program, 26% ahead of goal, including REI on-site sales. The goal was 800,000. We raised $1,068,000. In terms of grants raised, the goal was 300,000. We raised 127,000. Obviously, there was significant leadership change over the last year, but still significant amount in the six figures. Individual and corporate donations, an amazing 833,000, over a $200,000 goal. Bequests, you'll know that each year staff reminds me or tells me that we normally set a $5,000 goal for bequests. One can never ascertain what may occur in that world of planned giving. And so the amount raised to date for 2022 is $771,607. Campership appeal, 80% ahead of goal. That goal of 80,000, and we reached 125, nearly 126,000. The year-end appeal, I'm sure many of you received those year-end letters in the mail. The goal was 70,000. We were 53% ahead of goal at 122,000. So in terms of our fundraising achievements, certainly incredible strength and resilience in fundraising, given leadership transitions. As I noted during a board retreat, I certainly am here with over 15 years of nonprofit experience and very much appreciating working with the foundation board. So it's been a fairly smooth transition here. And very pleased to say the foundation, 13th year of consecutive revenue growth. Note the exclamation mark. Total fund balance set at an unprecedented 18 million, which includes the endowment dollars of 6.7 million. The foundation continues to increase its commitment to the Regional Parks Foundation District annually. You'll note that in 2022, nearly $126,000 were received from East Contra Costa County Habitat Conservancy. The funds are invested in the foundation's UBS Financial Services investment account. Total investment portfolio balance is at 6.7 million as of the end of 2022. Some highlights in terms of grants, 25,000 from Kaiser Permanente for the Trails Challenge program. As you all know, it's in our 30th year. So be sure to work towards that t-shirt. 17,000 from REI for the Bike Bells pilot program. $15,000 from Marathon Petroleum for the Thurgood Marshall, home of the Port Chicago 50 DEI outreach and engagement. And thank you, Director Coffey, for support there at year end to make that a reality. $10,000 from Alameda County Fish and Wildlife for Martin Luther King Jr. shoreline restoration work. Membership, an amazing record number, another record number at 12,586. Includes members in their renewal cycle. There were 546 donor circle members. Some efficiency work that the staff achieved in 2022 included upgrading our development database, the platforms that we could increase functionality, that included automating online recurring gifts, and really increasing our efforts around membership. Also held some tabling events at REI Dublin and Fremont to promote on-site sales. In 2022, certainly the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee of the Regional Parks Foundation focused on partnering with the Park District to better understand who we serve and identify any service gaps to support the Park District. We contributed to the International Day of Peace event attended by over 275 community members and completed our second full year of Access for All free membership pilot program. Again, with that mission of accessibility, certainly the Access for All free membership program, there were 188 family memberships distributed for 5 community organizations. You'll note that they're listed here from Oakland, organizations in Oakland, Concord, and Antioch, and certainly our Native American Confederate villages of Lisjan. I see that we've got a little overlap here. Apologies for that. Certainly in terms of program support, approximately 10,200 were served through various programs from wellness walks to our virtual programs. 540 participated in Fish Friends school programs. 362 people received translation services during programs at Big Break. And 150 children participated in the All Abilities holiday program at Ardenwood Historical Farm. Additional highlights include, and I'll let you look at these at your leisure, but certainly it was about serving under-resourced communities and populations so that they could experience nature and experience our many parks through the Community Outreach Outdoor Program. There was also the Boating and Fishing Scholarships Program to emphasize water safety. And certainly reaching underserved community members through the Vasco Caves Community Tours Pilot Program. Again, my apologies for some of the overlap in this PowerPoint. You can note that 523 backpacks to the parks were distributed through local libraries in both Contra Costa and Alameda County, reaching their various branches, and 325 backpacks to program participants at Reinhardt Redwood through the Hazel Family Foundation grant, and 48 through Sonoma Wilderness Nature Adventure Backpack Program. Our program, the foundation supported, includes highlights in regards to the lifeguard services. We know that the foundation continued funding programs such as Aquatic Adventure Crew, a week-long program teaching water safety skills to underserved youth, and $75,000 in funding for the first of a 3-year drowning prevention study in partnership with Delaware State University. Additional foundation grants to the Park District included $25,000 for the first of a 3-year feral cat management partnership program with Friends of the Oakland Animal Shelter, $10,000 awarded by Alameda County Fish and Wildlife for the Martin Luther King shoreline restoration efforts to protect habitats of endangered shorebird species. We would certainly like to highlight the foundation's impact in 2022. That was over 1.3 million. That includes over $500,000 for annual unrestricted grants, $425,000 in funds for parks, $353,000 for annual program support, and over $28,000 for campership support at Camp Arroyo. Lots of celebrations in 2022. To note a few, certainly the new Tilden Botanic Garden, Crafts Garden, Tyler Ranch staging area opening, Big Break Visitor Center's 10th anniversary, Snow Visitor Center ribbon cutting, and the Shadow Cliffs Pavilion ribbon cutting. You'll see in the photo here with that group shot. That includes our GM and foundation board members and Park District board members, I should say. Bequests, our plan giving committee did tremendous work in the last year. The total of 5 bequests actually total $771,000. Those bequests range from $31,000 to one bequest that was at the total of $455,000. So really kudos to the efforts of those board members and that particular committee. State planning seminars, there were an estimated 40 members, I should say, of the public who attended the Foundation's 2 virtual seminars that included an intermediate session about lessons learned on the front lines of estate planning. Please reach out to staff should you be interested in any of these seminars. In 2022 capital projects, the Foundation certainly celebrates with the Park District 5 visitor center projects funded by the Wayne and Gladys Valley Foundation's grant of $1 million that work was completed. And very exciting, as you note, the Tilden Interpretive Trail, Shadow Cliffs Pavilion, Black Diamond Mines, Snow Visitor Center, and the Del Valle Visitor Center. So very pleased to work together with the Park District in all of this. As you'll note, we certainly want to highlight the 2022 Board of Directors that included President Peter Liu, Vice President Hosroth, Treasurer Bruce Kern, and our Secretary Helene Morrison. And then, of course, leading into our 2023 Board of Directors with President Hosroth at the lead, Vice President Holly Potter, Treasurer Bruce Kern, and our Secretary John Martin, and the rest of the board members for the current year. We certainly want to highlight a few things, priorities for the year ahead. Certainly, as President Hosroth mentioned, we are in the recruitment process for a new executive director, which certainly, in our perspective, is a bonus position because of the success of the foundation and our work with the Park District. So we look forward to new leadership in the year ahead, further board engagement from the foundation standpoint, and board recruitment efforts. As the foundation's primary goal is to fundraise for the Park District and all of its great work, certainly its development goals for the year, and ongoing a strong and close partnership with the Park District. Certainly more to come as we do our work on the foundation side. President Hosroth, do you have any further comments? Certainly much work ahead.
No, I think I've said my piece. Much work ahead. We're very excited about working with the Park District and moving into what's going to be a kind of a reset, a year for us to just continue our good work.
Great. I know that President Hosroth was not at the mic, but certainly continuing our close partnership with the Park District and the good work ahead, and a bit of a reset, but it's a new year, much to do, and certainly the foundation board's very excited under President Hosroth's leadership. So we would welcome any questions, but that's our year in review for 2022.
Great, thank you. Any questions, comments from board members? Director Eccles.
Thank you. Well, thank you both for the wonderful report. Very exciting news and really impressive, all of the accomplishments and all of the fundraising in spite of such a difficult year. And really appreciate your partnership and look forward to growing and strengthening that partnership in the years ahead. I did have one question. It's a good question, but I mean, not a good question, but a positive question. But I'm interested to know, I mean, really, it's incredible, the fundraising. And I noticed in particular that the corporate and individual donations were 4 times goal, or more than 4 times goal. And so I was just curious, like, what do you attribute that to? Did something change? Was it just luck? I mean, it wasn't a good year for a lot of people financially. So I'm just wondering how you managed to pull off that kind of success.
You know, I would have to lean on staff a little bit on that, knowing that I came in the last quarter of the year.
Yes.
But I think it's the ongoing. I'm just going to say, frankly, that the Park District is an easy sell. We do such amazing work I get to put on two hats right now. But I think it's about the work that we continue to do, that we've done over the last several years, even as essential workers, during the last few years, and certainly the ongoing work. And the fact that we communicate that to the public, I think the public's clearly aware that we're there, and the families are out there. They're taking advantage of the courses, the camperships. So I think it has to do with communications and just the work and the benefits that the Park District provides. And I have to also thank the foundation board and the staff for all the work that they did throughout the year to make sure that they were reaching out and communicating, whether it was through the Compass magazine or their daily calls. Members call every day with questions. So that service delivery is key.
Yes, well, thank you. And I think along the same lines, I think it's really wonderful that you'll have an executive in charge of development for the foundation dedicated. And so that is also something that'll even make a bigger difference. So very, very excited about the progress and the future of the foundation.
Thank you, Director.
Anyone else? Colin?
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. During the transition, which has been focused on the restructuring of executive management of the foundation and our public affairs role and separating out the roles, and we spent a lot of time on that, and we spent a lot of time on those really personnel related, allocation of personnel and those issues. I recall that we discussed with early in this process, I as president of the board with foundation leadership, we talked with some substance involved about the bylaws of the foundation and the fact that they were very odd, at least in my experience, in that they really do not address the corporate relationship between the district and the foundation nonprofit corporation. And instead, we've historically relied on a contract of some sort. I haven't looked at it in quite a while. It's an MOU that describes the management services that the district provides for the foundation, and it also creates some of the ties that have come to exist. In any event, I raise this not based on the presentation, but as a question maybe to both organizations in a sense, and maybe on ours and legal counsels. I had the impression that we were going to look at those bylaws at some point. I mean, they're very simple concepts. One being that I think the district ought to be a sole corporate member, the equivalent of an owner of the foundation. And these concepts were important because there was this general anxiety, especially at the foundation level, that we were separating ourselves somehow. And among those items that I felt would reflect an actual desire to make the connection stronger, at least in terms of, if not operational, but in the corporate sense, we should be the sole corporate member of that nonprofit. We might want a public affairs presence on the board of directors. There were these issues that I call ties that would strengthen the relationship from the organization. And so my question is that still contemplated? Because it would probably involve this or an ad hoc committee of the board and also foundation board. And whether we're going to wait for the new executive director, which makes some sense for them to get used to it. But I know Lynn has looked at those bylaws. I remember being sent a copy and thinking they were really odd. So where are we on that?
Sure. So the short answer is yes. All of the above. Yes. So just to back up a little bit, and then certainly Lynn or Susan can jump in or Les. So we have taken one look at both the MOU and the bylaws, and then have engaged some outside help to look at, just again, want to make sure some of it is a little bit outdated. So there's some cleanup, that kind of putting that into the bucket of cleanup items that need to happen. And then there really are some legitimate, just substantive issues that we need to tackle as the two boards, in terms of really both bodies, I think, are aligned, and let's make sure that the language that's included in there actually makes so it's a much stronger tie, despite, some of the narrative about us, decoupling and making it so that there's more of, well, no, we have the desire to make sure it's much more strongly aligned and tied. So we have not put it entirely on hold, but you are correct, Director Coffey, that we would like the new executive director to come in, and with their experience, really, that's going to be at the top of their list of to-dos as soon as they walk in. So we already have, I think, our own administrative lists that we've compiled of things that we think both are technical cleanup items and then substantive policy questions that need to come in front of both boards, but really waiting on the new executive director so they can really lead that effort.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else to add on that.
No, I wouldn't have anything to add to what General Manager
Okay.
said.
And I would just add, we are aware that issue obviously did come up, but with our transitional efforts, we're certainly open to the dialogue and always have been, of course, but we haven't been well positioned to sort of lead it, and it's probably the leadership should come from your end in any event, but our board is aware of the issue and we want to strengthen the tie. We are aware that the legal relationship is a bit unusual. It's not unprecedented, but it's not the norm either. So that was kind of our conclusion. We're not, if there's a better way to do it, then we'll all be for that, if that's how it all works out best for both of us. But I do agree that given this kind of this organization is like many nonprofits, is very staff driven, and without an ED, Susan and Ann and Susan have a lot of other tasks as well. In fact, that's one of the reasons it was determined to have a standalone ED, because there's so much really to do. So when that person gets on board, I do believe it can and should well be, at the highest level, top of the plate kind of a position, and we'll be with you. And as Colin suggested, maybe a joint committee on the two boards. However it works out, it'll work out. But we're happy to have and we'll welcome that dialogue. And if there is a better way to do it, there are, unrelated to this issue, some of because we had to redid our committee structure because of some I re-looked at the bylaws and I was like, we really need to do this a different way. And we did it, but there's a few other things about our bylaws that are a bit odd as well. So if there's going to be a redo or is needed, then, we can kind of roll it all into one and get it all taken care of as part of, our ongoing efforts for this year.
Thank you. The other question that was triggered is more for management on this side, because it was just triggered and it's something that escaped my mind for 2 or 3 years. We engaged in a study of how much funding for this 3-year period the cat shelters, animal shelters would need, and Matt Grau did that. And that's where the $25,000 a year, I think for 3 years, is it? That was agreed to. I don't know. I don't think it was last year. I think it was the year before. Matt, at the same time, he came up with that figure. And this was really critical because we understood that the way our fundamental policy of not killing feral cats was going to be accomplished was by engaging the people who are very, very committed to the trapping and neutering and relocating the cats that were in the sensitive areas. And I believe that continues to be a successful strategy, and that funding is very important to it. At the time there was identified, again, I'll pick on Matt Grau, he's not here, that based on assistance the district was receiving primarily in East Contra Costa at Black Diamond, at Big Break, and then I believe Radke Shoreline, it was determined that we were getting quite a bit of help from the shelters and again, the volunteers who would trap from the Antioch shelter and the Contra Costa shelter. And that need was identified at 15,000 a year. And I was told that Carol Johnson said that couldn't be covered by the foundation. The foundation was committed to the 25 for the Oakland shelters. And I was told that the district would come up with that 15,000. And I think the last I asked Matt, which probably was 2 years ago, so was that was on somebody's plate somewhere around. And so someone might want to circle back and see what happened to that issue, because those folks certainly do assist them. I don't know that sure, certainly in Martinez we do, and Big Break we do, and sensitive marsh habitats and the issue of cats. So there was some need identified by stewardship, and I don't know if that was ever fulfilled. And so as a Ward 7 advocate, Susan's presentation triggered me to come circle around back on that.
Sure, I'll be happy to follow up with staff. I don't have that answer in front of me right now, but I'll get a response to the full board about really where we are with that entire program. Yeah, that'd be helpful. Good question. Thank you. I just want to note that, again, the foundation board and staff are really excited about this year. They've already done a tremendous amount of work in some reorganization with its own board committees. They're eager to move forward. And really with my role and even with a new executive director, you really will have my presence as the GM's representative, that really the relationship is at the highest levels for us to work together and to ascertain the park district's needs, funding needs, so that we can best support you. Thank you.
Great. So I would just say that, thank you very much for this presentation. It's the second time I've seen it. And I definitely agree with Les that you have a very talented and engaged board. I'm excited about everything new that's going on. I wish you well in the recruitment. Do you have a timeline of when you expect this ED to be on board?
We have a meeting scheduled with the recruiter, so I should have more information shortly, but not this morning.
Okay.
As soon as we can.
Okay, great. And then congratulations on the lease of the new space out in Livermore or Pleasanton. And, in looking at your presentation, I love all the great things you do. I'm especially intrigued by the drowning prevention programs and some of the swimming programs we have. I think that's an incredible opportunity, and I'm not lobbying, but I'm just kind of venting here. I mean, the idea of drowning being one of the top 5 causes of death for young people, and some of our underserved communities don't have opportunities to learn to swim. I think giving that opportunity, which was a lifelong opportunity, with all the the easy sell portion that we talk about all the time. Robert's Pool should be online hopefully this spring with a beautiful renovated pool. Hopefully Crown Beach might even come on, so we could teach these services and really do I don't want to criticize camperships. I think they're wonderful, but you get a week of campership and you learn how to have some fun. If we teach folks how to swim, we can teach a lifelong skill that can probably save your life or other people's lives till you're 85 years old. So I just a plug for that. But thank you for the presentation. I look forward to hearing back from you guys, and I look forward to, we mentioned the word enhancing the relationship of both boards, and I think we'll be able to do this, and I look forward to it.
Great, thank you.
Any comments from public? Are there any public here? Hearing none. Let's move on to the approval of McKay Avenue GSA property, Crown Beach expansion concept plan, and initiating phase 1 environmental review. Brian?
Good morning. It's still morning. Good morning, President Waspy, members of the committee. I'm Brian Holt, your Chief of Planning and GIS, Planning Trails and GIS. I'm here to present to you the McKay Avenue GSA property, Crown Beach expansion concept plan. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let's let that pop up here. So again, it's a pleasure to be here and present this project to you, this property to you, a longstanding project for the Park District and one of big interest. I'm here giving the presentation today, but really want to acknowledge my staff who've done the lion's share work on this, Principal Planner Naomi Laval, and really Planner Tanya Covarrubias, who's led this project from the beginning. So really great work on her part. Ushering this through. Also, this has been a collaborative partnership with our partners over in the design and construction department. So this is one of those projects that sort of straddle a little bit of planning and a little bit of design and construction. So want to acknowledge our new AGM of operations, but former chief of design and construction, Lisa Gorgian, and their partnership as we've worked on this. And of course, I want to acknowledge Director Ellen Corbett for her leadership on this project. She's provided comments throughout. This project is an important project in her ward and something we're looking forward to moving forward. So. Okay. So our recommendation here today is that the Board Executive Committee recommend to the full board the approval of the concept plan for the expansion at Robert W. Crown Memorial State Beach and allow staff to proceed with analyzing the environmental effects of the phase 1 project under CEQA. So we'll present the full project to you. This is really a multi-decade sort of feasibility study on what can be done with the site. The phase 1 project is the project that can move forward into an environmental review process. So it's our intent to get the board's agreement on this concept plan in terms of what we intend to provide on this site, and then be able to work with our folks over in design and construction as they move it forward into finalizing the design, getting into the details, and then moving that through the environmental review process. So that is why we're here today. So a little bit of background, there's a lot of history on this site. This was over a 3-acre property that was owned by the federal government, by GSA. It was acquired in 2015. Prior to its acquisition, of course, this site was way back when was known as Neptune Beach, was a recreation facility, a segregated recreation facility on the Alameda shoreline for many years until closing down in the late 20s, early 30s, and then was dismantled and eventually acquired by the federal government for the establishment of the Maritime Marine Services Training School. Officers Training School. And there was a number of facilities, not just on this property, but surrounding properties that were developed and used for those purposes. The property was declared surplus in the early 2010s. At which time there were housing proposals for the site, other proposals, and the Park District engaged with the property, engaged with the federal government, and really challenged the federal government, frankly, on the surplus, the sale of surplus property, and was successful and able to secure that for expansion of the park area. This site was identified in Measure WW for expansion to expand Crown Beach into surplus federal property. So we were successful in acquiring the property through a number of years of work with the federal government, but were able to acquire it in 2015. We initiated the development of the expansion concept plan in 2019. We're here today with the preferred concept plan, like I say, ready to move forward with the phase 1, moving that into more focused design and CEQA analysis. So we're here bringing it forward with the executive committee recommendation. So again, the timeline, this we sought to acquire this through a public benefit conveyance, Measure WW, approved by the voters, identified this acquisition as a priority. It was a subject of a lawsuit. We were able to acquire it in 2015. We were able to secure funds for the planning. In 2018, we hired Placeworks, a consulting firm, to assist us in the planning services, developed existing conditions, community outreach, concept development, a lot of community feedback, which I'll go over. And then we're here today with the final concept plan. So just a bit of an overview of the public outreach that has occurred. This did come to the board in 2019 as we brought it forward for award of the consultant contract. We kicked that project off with staff and consultant teams. We've had coordination with the city of Alameda throughout this process. We did establish a project mailer and website, advertise that through the Doug Seiden Visitor Center at Crab Cove to where folks could get more information and review existing conditions reports and subsequent reports. We worked with the city of Alameda to advertise this throughout the community via social media. We did present the project to the Alameda Parks and Recreation Commission. We had a couple of community pop-up events on the site, basically had staff and tents and materials available for folks to be able to provide input. We conducted a survey of the community to get input regarding what they would like to see on the site. We were able to present this to the East Bay Regional Park District and City of Alameda Liaison Committee. Brought the draft alternatives back to this body, to the executive committee in June 2021. We're able to bring the board on a tour of the site in June of 2022. And then we finalized the concept plan in September of 2022. And we're here today to move it forward through that final adoption. So regarding our public outreach, as I mentioned, we did conduct some public surveys for the site. 3 online surveys, got close to 600 responses, which is a pretty good response for a site of this size and in this area. We're pleased at our two pop-up events. We had over 150 participants come and engage with staff and learn more of the project. The vast majority of folks who did engage were from the city of Alameda, and you can really see a pretty wide age distribution there as well. So we felt good about the public outreach and the input that we received. So really, you can see sort of a breakdown of what we heard. A lot of interest in expanding recreation space and trails, really significant interest in expanding habitat, which is a challenge on this site as it's a developed site. There's always interest in expanding beaches and more picnic areas. A fair amount of interest in sea level rise adaptation. We do have significant educational services already at the site, some interest in expanding that, and then interest in having shaded areas for people to be able to recreate. So we took this input and really incorporated that into our design to maintain, some of the key site features, including the Bay Trail and the Glory of the Seas building. And I'll give an overview of the site to kind of orient you to each of these facilities. But and then really looking to balance the recreation use with the ecological functions, particularly as we look to the future and sea level rise. Preparing for sea level rise was a real critical component of this, is that a future condition that is something that we'll need to address. An interest in providing a diversity of recreational uses, educational facilities, and maintaining those existing trees. And really a lot of emphasis on trying to de-emphasize cars within the park. So we'll go into that a bit, but really a big part of the focus here was trying to get cars outside of the park, improving that entry sort of experience as you come into Crown Beach. So again, looking at some of the existing uses there, you can see sort of shaded out in the dark green is the park expansion area. This is on the shoreline off of McKay Avenue, which is sort of off of Central Avenue at Crown Beach. Glory of the Seas there is located at the end of the McKay Avenue. Of course, the now Doug Seiden Visitor Center at Crab Cove. A popular facility which is located there at the terminus of McKay Avenue, and then some of our shoreline access and the intertidal ramp and Bay Trail that traverses through the site. So just another bubble diagram that sort of shows what those existing uses on the site are. So you can see some of the existing picnic area staff parking where behind Glory of the Seas there, the Doug Sidon Visitor Center, existing picnic lawn, parking, and you can see that expansion area and the one remaining vacant GSA building that we have on the property. So I just grabbed a couple Google Earth shots real quick, just to sort of show what that sort of visual experiences as you're coming down McKay Avenue. So this is right as you're coming into the site. So you can see the sort of street parking and sort of busy vehicular activity that extends down McKay Avenue. So we'll go into this, but some of the intent is here to take those cars out of the park and freshen up this area as an entry point for the area. Looking across the site, you can see the existing condition of the GSA property. That building there is the remaining GSA building that's on the property. Prior, when we acquired, there were a number of buildings on this property that have since been demolished. This is the one remaining building there. So you can see what that looks like there from the streetscape. And just interestingly, Google, I guess, as they were driving down the site, happened to be there as buses were coming in and dropping off folks. So you can see it's a pretty busy spot there right in front of the Doug Sidon Visitor Center. Of course, this is where a lot of pedestrians are coming in accessing the property and the Bay Trail. So accommodating that bus use, having bus parking and turnaround, and sort of making this a more pleasant and safer space for pedestrians was a key focus. So going into the concept plan, so phase one, again, this is the sort of the near-term project, the 2025 to 2030 sort of time frame is where we actually develop that expansion area. So the key elements here is that we would again pull that roadway back away from the existing Crab Cove Visitor Center and then have it terminate where the existing entry to the parking area is. So that area would be re-landscaped and provide some outdoor education and group picnic spaces in front of the existing visitor center and between that area and the Glory of the Seas building. We would also be looking to relocate the service yard from where it is currently behind the Glory of the Seas building to the rear of the property. So then the landscaping, the area around the Glory of the Seas building can be made more attractive and publicly accessible with some public access, public picnic areas around those areas. Trails would weave throughout the site with recreational meadows that could be located through those. So those are areas that would be open for public access, also planted with native planting and provide some protected spaces for picnics and other recreational activities. Looking at some areas that can provide some coastal scrub planting. And then this is really an opportunity for us to begin prepping for sea level rise. So one of the components here is to actually raise up the Bay Trail for anticipation of future sea level conditions while maintaining some of the existing trails that go out on the intertidal area. So we're maintaining public access throughout the spit there as we continue to go there. So that's the initial phase. I will mention, one question that has come up throughout the project is the concern about the potential for loss of parking that may happen along the McKay Avenue as we remove that, pull that back. We did provide an area of overflow parking here that could accommodate any extra parking as needed and could also accommodate school bus turnaround and parking in the phase one. And then, shoot. So again, looking at phase one, that's just a little bit more detailed here as we're raising up the Bay Trail, moving that service yard, and providing those recreational facilities we just discussed. So another sort of bubble diagram, look at sort of the circulation and recreation improvements across the site as we'd be improving that there. Phase 2 is where we would actually be looking to then, once we've completed the redevelopment of the expansion area, this is where we'd be looking to expand the parking to provide more on-site parking. There would be no net loss of parking as a result of the of pulling back the McKay Avenue. So as we expand the parking area, we would provide for that expanded parking there. And this would be the opportunity, as we've in the first phase done the cleanup and the landscaping and everything around the Glory of the Seas building. Phase 2 would be when we could then turn our attention to programming that building. It is a challenging building given its age. It's a historic structure. So one of the challenges there is really how do we accommodate public access, and what sort of improvements would be needed for accessibility. So right now we've looked at this as this would be a future a building available for community use. What exactly that community use might be would be determined and probably a discussion throughout the phase 1 sort of design. You know what that would be. Our general manager has suggested it could be a teen center. I think that would be a great use to look at. There could be any number of possible uses that could be potentially viable there. And so that would be all part of the discussion as we look there. So again, that would be sort of you would see where the bus parking would come in and the drop off and some of the circulation around that site as we look to restoring the Glory of the Seas building as more of a accessible structure for the community there. So phase 3, this is really the long-term sea level rise adaptation strategy there. So looking at anticipating sea level rise through 50 years through 2070, what are future conditions going to be there? So the questions come up, why aren't we pursuing this sort of adaptation strategy in more of the near term? And the answer is really it's not necessary in the near term, and that sea level rise is sort of it's a longer term sort of thing. So we would be looking to maintain public access where we can. And then again, in phase 1, preserving that public access by raising up the Bay Trail, but then looking towards within the future sort of a managed retreat strategy to where we're maintaining access where we can, but providing new tidal marsh habitat where we are seeing inundation and flooding, but still preserving that shoreline experience. So providing some access through pulling the Bay Trail back, possibility for some boardwalks and educational boardwalk that could provide some access over the marshlands and into the bay, and then continuing to maintain public access on the uplands where possible. And again, I should note the expansion area is the area that's owned by the Park District. Crown Beach, of course, is largely owned by the state of California and is a state park and is operated by the East Bay Regional Park District. So all of this is going to, require long-term coordination with state parks as we continue to take a look and evaluate this area. So again, you can see that sort of boardwalk there, the intertidal area that could be created, but still maintaining picnic areas and that Bay Trail experience. So we're not losing recreation, we're restoring habitat and providing a resilient adaptive experience on the shoreline down here. So again, just quickly, the bubble diagram that shows where we're at there. And that really summarizes where we're at on the concept plan. So again, we're looking for the executive committee to recommend to the full board that we adopt this as the concept for this site. And then it will go to, we'll work it through our project system to then queue it up for a future design and construction project, future environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act for that phase 1 project, that that can be implemented in the near term as we go forward. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and that concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you, Brian. Any comments or questions from board members? Elizabeth.
I'll make a comment. Well, first of all, Brian, thank you so much for the presentation. This is really well done, both the presentation, but especially the work that's gone into this. And I really appreciate the careful thought and planning, and especially around sea level rise. And thank you for addressing in advance the question about, the 2 to 3 feet versus the 12 feet, because that's actually what I was going to ask. So you've already answered it. And, I think it's really well done. So thank you so much for your work on this and your team's work on this.
Colin?
No questions or comments other than to echo the appreciation for all the work efforts gone into this for a long time. It's really looking very attractive.
Thank you.
And I would agree, Brian. I think this is fantastic. I spent so much time there. It's such a great opportunity. There's so many people around it. I mean, it's the issues of getting to the parks like we always have when we have hill parks and way out there parks. This is right there. So we can really showcase the great stuff we're doing. I think it's great with the parking, moving it around. I know there's a net no loss or no gain. I'm wondering, what are the overall number of parking sites? It always seemed under parking site or parking space. But I understand that. I wouldn't want to fill a nice space like that with more parking sites, but
yeah, well, thank you, President Waspy. And I think, to some degree, it's probably true that we never have enough parking at any of our parks. So yeah, so the existing parking lot there is it's 45 spaces. There's 10 to 15 spaces that are located along McKay Avenue that would be removed as we create that new entry plaza. And then the existing parking lot would be expanded to a total of 62 parking spaces. So we may be gaining a couple, but I will just mention in terms of, we hear a lot in the planning department about transit accessibility, pedestrian accessibility into our parks. And I think, one thing that I just emphasize for this site, given its location in Alameda and the sort of urban area around there, this is really a good transit accessible park. So we do want to maintain parking clearly, obviously, for folks who may not be able to take transit, or for those with different abilities or families who may have equipment and those types of things. But I do think this is also a good opportunity to really emphasize the transit accessibility to the shoreline as well. So we're maintaining the existing parking and then look forward to having folks access the park in any variety of ways.
And I might also add that, I think that's great. And the idea of moving cars off of the street parking in McKay is brilliant, in my opinion. I mean, that you referred to as the entry to the park, I call it a promenade. That would be beautiful down there. And I don't know how you're going to get those transit buses to make turns down there, because it is clogged up, as we see all the time. But, I was thinking accessibility wise, it's not a bad, you're not parking in the back end of the Costco parking lot and having to walk through a bunch of garbage. If you park over in that giant lot, over the main lot over on, what is it, Otis? There's plenty of parking over there. And if we could like the improvement of to make it more obviously folks that need the accessibility and a comfortable ride over there, if we concreted in that path, it's less than a quarter of a mile, and it's a beautiful view of the bay. So yeah, I love the idea of parking, moving out of there, and that McKay being this open space where we can, like an entrance to a park, it'll be gorgeous. Glad the courtyard's moving. I always thought that was kind of glory of the seas. History-wise, I remember in the 80s, early 80s, we were going to call that, it was the center of the district in those days. And we were going to have it be the training center for everyone in the district. And I had happened to be on the trades crew at the time, and we remodeled that building and made it all fire safe. And I was even part of building that exterior fire escape. It was a great tradition. Everybody came there for all the meetings. They were all held there. And every single person that came there, it seemed like, got a ticket going home in rush hour traffic from this Alameda City Police Department. So no one showed up to meetings anymore. It's kind of fallen into ill use or not used at all. But anyway, I think it's a great idea. I agree with you. The Glory of the Seas building, I think, is a real, there's not much going on there, but when you get on that second floor and you look at that curved face looking out at the bay, it's makes you, I think I was told that that was supposed to be the impression you were on a ship training these guys, and there's a wheelhouse up there, and I get the same impression every time I go up there. So I'm glad you're doing all this. Thanks. Are there any comments from the public? Hearing none, we do have the challenge or charge or opportunity to recommend to the full board to go ahead with this project. Would anyone like to make a motion to do that?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Coffey and a second by Director Eccles. If there's no further comments, Monica, would you take a roll call vote?
Yes. President Waspi,
Aye.
Director Coffey,
Aye.
and Director Eccles.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much for the report, Brian.
Thank you very much.
All right, our next item is the 2023 Board Executive Committee Look Ahead Calendar. Dr. Alvarez. Hi.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Director Waspi, Deputy General Manager, Dr. Ana Alvarez. The item before you is the 2023 Look Ahead Calendar, which identifies matters of the East Regional Park District that require the advanced consideration of the Board Executive Committee, who serves in an advisory capacity to the full Board of Directors, in the formulation of policy and other board actions for the board operating guidelines. The look ahead is intended, here we go, it's on the screen. The look ahead is intended to serve as a planning tool as it provides a preview of business items that will be brought forward to the boards for the board's consideration in the calendar year 2023. Director Waspi, I'm pleased to share with you that we have a well-balanced and meaty look ahead for 2023 with approximately 40 items, which signals to a promising year in advancing the public's business in mission delivery by the Board Executive Committee. So today I would like to take an opportunity to focus on 4 major categorical areas where some of these items live, such as advancing new policies, crystallizing regional planning efforts, advancing essential programmatic endeavors, as well as delivering on the public's commitments through the completion of capital projects. In the calendar that you have in front of you, you will see that staff proposes to advance 5 policies in 2023 to support transparency and to guide the decision-making process, including a new sponsorship policy for non-park district events, completing the records retention policy, completing the electrical, bicycle, and regional trails policy, as well as introducing the design, build, bid policy, and introducing criteria consideration for land acquisition in the preservation of threatened lands. There are 4 items under park planning and land use planning scheduled to come in front of you, including the McKay Avenue project, which you just saw, which was considered today. Also, a conceptual plan for Jewel Lake at Tilden Regional Park. We're hoping to complete that conversation this year. And the long-awaited Vasco Hills Fire Preserve Management Plan. It's important to highlight 4 items under what we call the long-term programmatic endeavors, including a new feature at the request of Director Coffey to bring forward information on those partnership efforts that the district invests so much into, such as the Together Bay Area participation, the 30 by 30 conservation movement. We're also planning to bring forward information on our role and participation and contribution to the Bay Restoration Authority, and as well as the Bay Trails Council, and certainly the BCDC Regional Shoreline Adaptation Plan Advisory Committee, where our planning staff has an important seat at the table. So thank you, Director Coffey. We're bringing all those forward to you. And then lastly, I would like to highlight 3 major capital projects that will be brought forward for your consideration in 2023, which includes an update on the Environmental Education Center at Tilden Regional Park, and the CEQA adoption and project approval for 2 key projects, which includes the Calavera Ridge Trail, as well as the San Francisco Bay Trail Point from San Francisco Bay Trail, and we're looking at Point Pinole to Wilson Point. So that's the highlights I wanted to share with you. This is also the opportunity to hear from you. If there are specific items of interest that you would like us to consider, happy to have that discussion here today. Is there anything else, Sabrina, that you would like to add or say?
I'm just, sorry, this is small,
Yeah,
so I'm
not
trying
doing
to
this.
squint and read it.
Can you,
The only thing, I think I don't want to put it on the calendar yet, but we did mention it earlier today, is some sort of either joint meeting with maybe some of the executive board members of the foundation.
Oh,
So
yes.
a placeholder on the discussion of the foundation
we'll certainly do that.
relationship.
Mhm.
Well, thank you very much, Anna. Any board comments on this? I can't see any board members, but I'm sure we're going to exit out of this
Yeah.
soon.
I'll just quickly say,
you go.
looks good, and it's very helpful. I appreciate having the look ahead, and thank you, Director Coffey, for your suggestion about some of this.
Thank you. Director Coffey, anything?
That thought arose from the realization that a lot of folks on our senior staff serve on either organizational boards, organizational advisory committees, or just in some substantial role by reason of what they do for the park district. The one that came to mind because I was looking at our calendar was the Together Bay Area Council, formerly the Bay Council?
Bay Area Open Space Council.
Open Space Council, of which the Park District had a major role in actually its formation some years ago. And it fairly recently changed its name to Together Bay Area and expanded the scope of organizations that are involved in it. But Lisa Baldinger has been a member of its board of directors.
That's right.
Very much involved in the governance of the organization. And it just occurred to me that that was one example of someone in our management staff that's very active in another organization to which we partner and we engage in. And it would be great to give Lisa an opportunity to tell us what's going on with Together Bay Area and her involvement in it. And Sean Dugan's on the Bay Trail Council, Advisory Council. So that there are numerous examples beyond Dr. Alvarez and the 30 by 30 organization throughout the state. Questions? I did have some questions. Sponsorship policy of non-district events. I'm curious what triggered that being on the list. And having said that, I think it is a good topic to have on the list because it's occurred to me, and that's probably why it's on the list, that we've had some issues arise at times about sponsoring community events and whether it was appropriate for the park district to sponsor events. And I had some experience with that with my own career representing special districts, healthcare districts, and the perennial question they kept getting and was finally actually zeroed in at the Salinas district about a decade ago by the state auditor. And, you know, what was really legit and what might be questionable. And the state auditor came down and said, you know, some of the sponsorships you're doing of just community organizations that have nothing whatsoever to do with healthcare. What is that about? And they didn't have a written policy. So ever since then, I've been aware that it is really important for agencies to have a written policy that describes when they will sponsor XYZ community organization by buying a table at their event. And when you steer clear of it, because it really doesn't have any relationship to the mission of the district, and you end up having to come up with some community relations basis for the sponsorship, which, you know, as long as you have a written policy to that effect. Am I getting that all right? Or is there anything else?
Absolutely
'Cause we haven't
right.
talked about this.
Yes, we will be talking about this at the next meeting, but we do have a long list of items, policy matters I would like to bring forward in its own time pertaining to how do we align specific actions, such as in this case, the allocation of public funds in alignment with mission delivery and our goals and our work plans with the Park District as we provide support for these non-park district events. So we certainly need to have criteria, everything that you said, Director Coffey, and also supporting transparency on how those decisions are made. And but in addition to that, we're taking the opportunity to always to see how we do our work so that we have gain efficiencies, support transparency, and that in fact we are maximizing and accelerating opportunities and leveraging the work so that we can accelerate the conservation of lands and waters, which is in the passive recreation, which is in the mission of the district. So this is one of 5 policies that we're looking at this year.
President Coffey, I want to add to that this is a policy that actually predates my working at the Park District. Carol, Victor, and Jason Rosenberg drafted a policy that's going to be coming before you. One of the things that has changed since probably you've been not since you have been not working for hospital boards, but there have been a number of additions to the government code that do restrict how taxpayer dollars can and should be spent in terms of both whether it's a political kind of contribution or whether it contributes to lobbying or whether or not it's an appropriate, you know, gift of public or inappropriate gift of public funds, those kinds of things. So it's drafted with all of those concerns in mind, as you said, and really reflects some updates in law that we haven't had to address previously.
Good, yeah. It's difficult, you know, there are hundreds of service clubs within the 2 counties. And we'll get approached and say, why don't you folks buy a table for our, and I've had to say, you know, we're kind of restricted in our, you know, the relationship we have with organizations that are consistent with our mission or whatever. And it's nice to have a policy somewhere that you can point to. Well, we don't really do that. So thank you for bringing it forward. I'm wondering where that policy that we passed with some controversy from some of our friends on the granting of authority to the general manager and urgency items on urgency matters for a temporary imposition of alteration to park operations with some urgency. I need to get it done. And the temporary basis, we had some language that we passed and we had some objections, and majority of the board said, well, let's look at this in 6 months. And I'm wondering what the process will be. Maybe it's an exec committee review that then goes to the full board, unless you folks want to take it to the full board. I'll just leave. I don't see it here. And I know I have that in my mind that it was important to some of these folks that were concerned about that to have us review it, and to the board members. I mean, we got some no votes on that, and I'd like to see it brought up within that 6 months period, either the full board or maybe through the exec committee. So food for thought. Electric bike policy update is scheduled for May. I just advocate for doing it sooner. Because what we were left with is a very explicit recommendation from staff in November or December. And it was to, I believe, this committee, and it was at the committee's behest on the basis of we're all witnessing the increased utilization of electric devices, for lack of a better word, but both e-bikes and those little scooters and skateboards. And I have no idea what they call those one wheel little things that people are. I was on the Bay Trail looking at it, and all of this is not in theory allowed on the Bay Trail, and they're utilizing the Bay Trail where I live big time. So this is just happening, and it's happening in the parks proper. And I just thought, unless we want to just kick back and let it happen without really thinking much about, is there a need for separately regulating e-bikes from that regulation of ordinary bikes? I've expressed personal view that no, it's basically eventually ordinary bikes are going to be largely replaced by e-bikes. Prevalence, they're becoming less expensive. The battery's better. It's just for all sorts of reasons. These bicycles will be the primary means of biking within 5 to 10 years. And, we could just let it happen because it's happening. But there are groups that want to control that. And I think have an opportunity to protest what I'd like to see happening. And there are maybe some legitimate concerns about exactly what kind of habitat you want those bikes going through based on the Mid-Penn study. I'm just, these things are important. It's outpacing us in terms of our response to it. And I don't know if Dennis and Elizabeth, you think there's some need to address it sooner and later. May is off a little. We teed it up. We had some of our stakeholders come and say, you're moving on this without public input. And I'd like to just be responsive to that and start creating vehicles for public input on e-bikes. March, April. I know in park district years, a couple of months isn't much of a difference as things go, but I'd like to do it next month or April and just get public input going on what Jim O'Connor presented, and is complete with a recommendation. Just a thought. Other than that, I think it's a very good list. I appreciate there's a theme to transparency issues that we want to keep up on and keep up on with best practices among public agencies. That's a very good thing to do. And I'm sure there are other issues over time that each of us, not just on the committee, but board members will think, that the exec committee ought to take up because it's very fundamental to our board operations or management operations and the other issues that the executive committee takes on. And I think I would benefit one more time for an explanation as to, and it doesn't have to be today, but as to the issues that come before the executive committee that are projects that we hear, as opposed to projects that go to operations or finance. And I know that's been explained to me, but sometimes I see issues on the exec that I'm wondering why they're not going to operations. Finally, I'll end with this. In June, number 3, I have a big question mark. Authorization to award and execute a 5-year contract to managed protected leaves under the Family Medical Leave Act, Family Rights Act, President and Pregnancy Disability Act. What is a contract with a consultant to manage these programs? I've never heard of that.
I'm going to do my best, Director Coffey, since AGM Cook, this is an item that's coming from Human Resources with AGM Cook. And it's an item that may come in June or not sooner. And to your point, before I get into the leaves management, I just want to say thank you for your comment. This is it's meant to be flexible, a living document. It will move a little bit. It's a preview. And so it's not static. It's a living document that we will use as a planning tool. This item that you identified in June may move sooner, may be coming forward sooner than later. And it basically is an effort to streamline how the Park District has been managing leaves. And again, not having spoken to AGM Cook yet or having read the report, I have an understanding that it goes back, in my opinion, in being able to streamline functions and managements of very important benefits and leaves and coordination of those leaves as the organization continues to grow. So what it was managed in a smaller organization very intimately, we're having to add capacity to be able to manage this in accordance with all the many different laws as you layer all these leaves. That's unless Len and Sabrina would like to add anything else.
I mean, are these established consultants or is it just a lawyer?
It's
I'm sorry, just a
services.
lawyer.
I think Allison Cook would have to give you more information.
that's fair.
We're not up to date, but I'm also not sure when you talk about like what is supposed to come to this committee, that contracts like this are really not just meant for the full board or for consent calendar. So that's what I would have some questions about, is whether or not there actually needs to be a presentation on this type of a contract, but you should be able to get all the
At some level,
information.
because obviously I don't know what it is.
Well, the staff report would explain what it is, obviously. So, but that's a topic for a
That's
whole
true.
other
I can
thing.
always read the staff
Yeah.
report. Okay, that's fair. That's it for me, Dennis. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I think this is great. It's robust. I'm wondering if there's any place, and I've been off the executive committee for whatever number of years it is, and I'm wondering sort of exactly, and we don't have to do it here. I guess we can do it offline if you want, but I'm wondering what our role is. I think that sometimes we say, oh, we don't want to bring things to the full board. Let's bring it to the executive committee. I remember some of my colleagues used to always say that. I'm interested in things like updates on what's going on. We kind of misfired a little bit, and maybe that's the wrong word, but the whole board agenda packets deal. I think we could have talked that out maybe at this type of committee meeting or somewhere, to where I think we could have made a really simple discussion out of the whole issue and figured it out without the somewhat consternation that we had over that. I'm very interested in updates of what's going on, and I'm not being critical, but I think I need to hear some things like, I'd like to see an update of, we budgeted hiring something like 36 or 7 or 8 people last year, and now we've got 40 people this year. But the example I use is the trails crew. I find that an incredibly important crew that we budgeted for 2 years ago, said it was the most important priority. It rose to the level of beating out a bunch of other people that had other good reasons to hire people, and we don't have a trails crew yet. And I'm wondering, what's the deal there? Or maybe saying, I'd like to see maybe an open report every month from, and I know it's somewhere, but I don't see it, or I can't find it, or it's difficult to find. Of the 40 new employees, how many people have we hired? What's our progress? How are we going through this? And just sort of I don't know, what would the agenda item be called? Updates, or what's new, or I'm not sure. But I would feel, I'd sure like to get some more information at some point. And I don't know, I'm always told that should be at the executive committee level. And I wasn't on the executive committee, so I didn't know it was ever happening or not. But does that sound reasonable?
Yes, Director Waspi, actually what comes in front of you or in front of the board executive committee is spelled out in the board operating guidelines. And one of the items is there's informational items pertaining to human resources. And I didn't showcase it in my presentation, but we are scheduled in the month of May to have a human resources update. And now that I'm hearing your interest, that you would like to have a better understanding, an update on the recruitments of all these FTEs, this is something that we can share with AGM Cook, because she's been doing a lot of work in scaling up, in being able to meet all those needs. And it's so I will share your interest with her, as she can bring in a piece and introduce also the new practices, as well as how an update on these 40 SOAP positions in the last 2 years. And this is where it will go under. So it's programmatic areas, human resources.
But it
Now,
would
if
only
you-
be one time in May.
Yeah, we can look at it as a recurring item. Maybe we bring it twice a year as I'm used to doing it. I've called it like a vacancy report essentially. So it gives you, here are the open classifications and, really what's the status? How many have we hired over the last 6 months? How many are vacant and why? I would, as our policy and oversight board here, being able to give you guys some reasons on why. Are there some, because there's a lot of different reasons why some things are moving faster than others. And there's some policy points that I think Allison would love to be able to share with you. So we can look at kind of what the appropriate frequency of that is, but bring it back to her and see kind of what it would look like to package it up sometime this spring. And then I think it'd be great to bring it again as part of sometime like early fallish, so that you have a sense before your budget of how we're doing with the new positions.
I think that would be very helpful. As I was listening to the conversation, I was thinking about exactly that.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it would be appropriate to bring that kind of information to the executive committee, and so that we can really be aware of how we're moving, because the employment issue and getting those slots filled really is important, and it does, I think it's appropriate to bring it to the executive committee.
Okay. All right, great. We'll follow up with her.
Great, thank you. So thank you for the great, we got to find a better word than robust calendar ahead of us. We use robust a lot of times, but I think it'll be a great year. Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I have, I have a thought, and it's difficult to articulate, but it is one that periodically comes up and just did in my mind with the discussion we just had. There is a very good argument. I've always suggested that this board have a HR or personnel committee, that government agencies, governing bodies of government agencies often have incorporated into their governance. And this agency hasn't ever done that. And the substitute for it, all my health agencies have HR committees of the board, because especially in hospitals, as you can imagine, HR issues are a constant, and they are constantly pressing those in governance. We have an awful lot of HR issues that get to the board one way or the other. And it's just a thought that I'll continue periodically to raise. It is not a popular thought with management, as we all understand and can acknowledge. And this, the exec committee has always been put forth as the alternate. But I do think that the points Director Eccles and Director Waspy made address that underlying, thought about the role of governance in HR, and that perhaps we need to be more attentive at it at the exec level if we're not actually having a direct board HR committee. Again, just a thought.
Thank you, Colin. I tend to agree with that. Anyhow, let's move to public comment. Kelly, anything?
Yes, thank you. Just a quick note, Sequoia National Park does have a trail crew, and their San Francisco Chronicle has a long detailed story on it from 2 weeks ago. Let's see. All right, here we go. I think that there's not enough credit is being given going to the outgoing police chief. Police departments are everywhere. They're always a house of cards. They can collapse at any time and put you on the hello, and they can collapse at any time and put you on the front page by putting you on the front page of the newspaper in an unfavorable light. So when these police departments, culture is the most important priority, not pyramid building, not high-tech equipment and weapons and helicopter squadrons. So the retiring police chief, you got to get more credit for keeping it together. And I haven't seen it on the front page of the newspaper lately, so that's a good thing. And there's a huge problem in this with the operations of the district in lack of transparency. Sunol Regional Park is closed. Foothill Staging Area at Pleasanton Ridge, the main staging area at Pleasant Ridge is closed. And these are urgent emergency actions that are happening in the dark with no accountability. It's as if you're running an airline and you delay the flights, but you don't update the passengers that are all standing around in the boarding lounge. Or you're an airline that cancels flights and you don't rebook the passengers. You just go to the website, it says closed. You know, that's it, closed. No information about any future accountability. What are you doing? When is it going to reopen? You know, what are you waiting for? Whatever. And then partnership efforts with the city of Fremont and Coyote Hills have failed. And this district can't just sit back and point the finger at other agencies. As Colin Powell said, you broke it and you own it. This district went out there last November. That was 2 months ago, and you bulldozed and you removed the 50 spaces at Coyote Hills right there at the front entrance, right next to Paseo Padre Parkway. So now you have helped to create to expand the circus of lawlessness on Commerce Drive with 50 cars parked there illegally every weekend because the city has outlawed perfectly good parking spaces. It's not like Lake Chabot, where all those perfectly good parking spaces are being used. They went out there, they put up no stopping signs. And then just because they don't hand out parking tickets like they do at Mission Peak doesn't mean it's okay. Mission Peak, everyone's getting paying. They make thousands of parking tickets. That doesn't, that's bad. And they need to remove those no stopping signs at Coyote Hills and get this and tell us, put it right down on the website. When is Sunol Regional Park going to reopen? When is the Foothill Staging area? What are you doing? It's all, just we do whatever we want, and we'll let you know when we get to it. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. Legitimate questions, Kelly asked. I think we all have legitimate reasons and very good reasons for closing some of our parks and doing some of the things we do. Maybe we need to communicate a little bit better, but we'll work towards that. Any other members of the public? I don't see anybody in our meeting. Monica, you don't see anyone, do you?
Yeah, no further public comment.
Okay, in that case, are there any committee member comments?
Not for me. Thank you.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Anything from the general manager or deputy general manager? Geez, we got time. We'll include anybody. Anybody have any comments, questions? Hearing none, thank you all for being here and thank you for a great meeting. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Monica. And Monique.